Science.
Hey, what's up guys? Joker here. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Sapphire Fury Tri-X graphics card. Now, I know that I've never reviewed an AMD graphics card on the channel before, and people have been asking me for a long time, Joker, when are you going to finally review an AMD graphics card? Well, today is finally the day that we have an AMD card in to test on the channel, and this is the first card that I've ever tested in the new test system, Dark Slunt Rising, which I built last week. If you guys want to see the entire build of that, I'll put a link to it down in the description below. I built the entire thing on a live stream. That was a lot of fun. And the first order of business, once I got the system up and running and got Windows 10 installed, was to review this graphics card. So I've been running it all weekend. I've been playing games on it, running benchmarks, and just taking it through its paces and seeing what the Fury can do from Sapphire. Now, before we talk about any performance on this card, I have to talk about the cooler and the heatsink that they have on the Tri-X from Sapphire. In addition to its three 90mm fans, which definitely do the job when they are spinning because they don't turn on all the time. You actually have to really get this thing under load for the fans to even kick in. I spent about 2 hours playing GTA 5 maxed out, and the fans never kicked on, and the card didn't go over 75 degrees Celsius, which I would consider more than acceptable temperature for gaming, especially when the GPU was maxed out at 100% the entire time. Not 99%, 100% usage pretty much the entire time during my 2 hours I spent playing GTA 5, and the fans never kicked on. The only time I was actually able to get the fans kicking on is if I went on something like Heaven or Valley and just let that thing run for like a half hour without turning it off and just let it keep on going on loop. Then the fans would actually kick in, but they wouldn't even go up to like over 30 or 40%, and they were just whisper silent. Could not hear the fans on this thing at all, even when they did kick in, which was very rare. I actually could not get them to kick in at all during any of the games I tested. Witcher 3, the fans just didn't turn on, and they didn't really need to because the heatsink just did the job, keeping the card under 75 degrees. This is probably mostly due in part to the fact that they have 7 copper heat pipes inside this thing, 5 of them running the entire length of the card, and an additional 2 copper heat pipes that go along the length of the PCB. Now, there also is a really nice brushed aluminum backplate on this card with a cutout in the middle to help some of that heat escape from the GPU itself. The card also has a solid die-cast frame which extends down the entire length of the card, and you can see it crisscrossing in a pattern extended past the PCB along the entire heatsink on these high-density fins that are going down past the PCB itself. To power this card, you are going to have to use 2 8-pin connectors, as it is quite the power-hungry GPU, having a 275-watt TDP, so expect this thing to pull some serious juice if you're going to be putting it in your system. The card also does feature a dual BIOS switch, so if you are a serious overclocker and you want to flash your BIOS, then you can be rest assured that you're going to be able to do that without fear of bricking your card, as you'll have a backup BIOS to go over to if you need to. As far as connectivity is concerned on the graphics card, it does have 3 DisplayPort connectors at the back and 1 HDMI. So if you are thinking about setting up something like 3 FreeSync iFinity displays in surround, then you could definitely do that using the 3 included DisplayPort connectors on this graphics card. Okay, so we've taken a look at the design and the cooler on the Sapphire Tri-X Fury card. So let's talk about the performance and what I experienced over the course of this weekend playing games on this graphics card. Probably the most intensive game that I tried as far as video memory is concerned was Shadow of Mordor at 4K with the HD texture pack cranked all the way up. That pushed this card to about 3.6 gigabytes of video memory being used, so it never reached its maximum limit of 4 gigabytes on that HBM. But the game was not really playable at 4K on a single GPU. It was, around 30 FPS, which I would say was my experience in a majority of these more taxing titles like Witcher 3, GTA 5. Anytime I cranked these games up to 4K, I was looking at around the 30 FPS range and sometimes even lower. So if you are looking to pick up this card for 4K, I would definitely say you're still going to need at least 2 GPUs, but I would really say that for pretty much any graphics card out there today. I firmly believe that there is not a single GPU on the market that is capable of just handling 4K on its own with a single GPU card. Maybe dual GPU cards, sure, but not on a single GPU card like the Fury or the 980 Ti. Even the 980 Ti or the Titan X, really not up to scratch for 4K gaming on a single GPU. In my opinion, if you wanted to get the solid 60 frames with all of your graphics options cranked up, you're still going to need 2 cards, and that would hold true with the 980 Ti as well as the Fury. So I would be interested to try this in Crossfire, maybe some point, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that, but it would be awesome to see how this could perform in 4K with 2 of the GPUs. As far as 1080p and 1440p performance is concerned, it was absolutely phenomenal. For 1080p, you might argue that this is maybe a little bit overkill, but I really wouldn't, because if you're looking to play games, maxed out, getting 60 FPS with all of your filters cranked up, then it really does the job. And it comes in at around $560, so it's a little bit more than a GTX 980, which puts it kind of in an odd position, because as far as frame rate performance is concerned, it really does trade blows with the GTX 980, so keep an eye out in the near future. I'm actually going to be doing a video where I pin the Fury up against the GTX 980 and go head-to-head for frames in 1080 and 1440p performance. So if you guys want to see that video, show me by sticking a big thumbs up on it down below. But like I said, for 1080 and 1440p gaming, you really can't go wrong with this card. At 1440, you're not going to be able to max out everything, but if you turn down just a couple of anti-aliasing filters, you're probably going to be able to get 60 frames on almost every game out there. On Witcher 3, I was around 45 to 50 frames at 1440 maxed out. It did sometimes go a little bit below 40, but for the most part, it was pretty consistent and smooth at that frame rate. So if you were running something like a FreeSync monitor, you're probably going to get a pretty smooth experience overall. And that was at 1440. For 1080p, it could max that game out no problem. I didn't try with like Hairworks or anything like that, because I just didn't find it fair to try any Nvidia technology on an AMD graphics card. So playing it like at 1080p with the Hairworks off, I was always north of 60 frames, barely ever dip below 60 at all, even during some of the most intense sequences of that game. GTA 5 was a little bit more intensive out in some of the open areas, out near like where Trevor lives. I did see some of the frames dropping down into like the mid 40s if I did have the advanced graphics features cranked all the way up. But if I did turn down the advanced graphics features, it wasn't a problem running this game with everything else maxed out at 1080p. At 1440, it did begin to struggle a little bit, and I had to start turning down things like MSAA in order to get that solid 60 frames, but everything else I had cranked up all the way. So if you don't mind, turning down some anti-aliasing and playing, if you are going to be playing at 1440p, then the Sapphire Fury could still perform pretty well for you. Now, as far as my testing is concerned for this card, I tested just about every benchmark that I could possibly think of that I had on games that I owned, as well as synthetic benchmarks. So let's go ahead and roll through those now and kick off the Rockin' Benchmarks! So as you guys can see there, the Sapphire Fury Tri-X really does hold its own in 1080 and 1440p performance. It struggled a lot at 4K, but to be honest, that was expected by me, because in my opinion, you really do need a dual GPU setup to play games in 4K, maxed out and getting 60 FPS. So you would really need like an SLI or Crossfire configuration to get that kind of performance if that's something you're after. But if you are looking for a good high-end GPU for 1440 or 1080p, then the Sapphire Fury Tri-X is definitely worth considering, just for the sheer fact that this card runs cool, it runs quiet, and the frames numbers really do just speak for themselves. So I'm going to go ahead and get out of here now, guys. Be sure to check the links down in the description below for where you can pick up the Sapphire Fury Tri-X over on Amazon, which goes to help support the channel. And I'm going to get out of here, and I'll catch you guys next time. Ciao.